Hello, I'm Trista Markwind, and today for the interviewing series, I'm going to be discussing the interchanging roles that's discussed in our textbook, the interviewing practices and principles. I'm using the 13th edition. My information will cover pages 24 through 26 of the 13th edition in chapter 2 of the book. Interchanging roles during the interview are two parties that speak and listen to each other. Usually one will ask questions while the other answers questions, and this can go back and forth or even change roles, which we will discuss during this presentation. You have interviewer and interviewee exchange roles. The interviewer is usually the person asking the question. The interviewee is the one that's usually answering the question and elaborating on the answers that are given. There are different ways of communicating in an interview. One is human communicators, which is your body language, your eye contact, the way you move your hands, the way you move your head, a yes nod, a no nod. The way that you verbally communicate is through answers, through questions, and maybe even tone of voice and tone of the way that you're telling what you're trying to communicate depending on the interview. If it's a friendly interview, it's a recruiting interview, maybe even a disciplinary interview. Like I said, the nonverbal signs are a lot of those human communicators that we use: the head nods, the shoulder shrugs, the eye rolls, the eye contact, the hand motions and movements, and just the way we sit or position ourselves to talk to the person that we're talking to. The directive approach, which can be found on page 24 of the textbook of the 13th edition, it discusses the direct approach, which is where the interviewer establishes the purpose of the interview. They establish the pace, the climate in the room, or the climate of the place that they're meeting, the formality, whether it's a formal meeting, a casual meeting, or a meeting that's just, an informational meeting, but it's not something that you have to dress up for, and it's something you have to prepare for like you would a job interview. Closed questions are usually asked. They want yes, no answers, which are the direct answers. They want certain answers. They don't want you to elaborate. They don't want explanations of those answers. Some of them are information giving, which means the interviewer is just going to give you the information that they want to give you, such as in like a disciplinary interview, where they are telling you your critique on where you can be, where you should be, what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, and why they're having the meeting that they're having. The directive approach is also used in surveys for the direct yes or no answers, the closed-end questions. Opinion polls, which are also the yes, no, or 1 to 5 answers. They're not elaborate. You don't elaborate on those answers. Employee recruiting, it says in the book that it is covered under the direct approach. Most of the interviews that I've ever had or participated in have not been just a direct approach. It may be part of the process on answering the questions, if the person qualifies, if they know how to use a certain piece of equipment, or if they certain information that they know about the job in particular and experience that they have. But usually interviewers for jobs and recruiting, they want you to elaborate on what you know, what you have done in the past, and so on. Disciplinary, like I said, this is also used for disciplinary because they're giving you information. They're not so much as looking for information from you. They're wanting to give you information on how to do your job better. Persuasive is another one. Salespeople ask you questions all the time, and they want yes or no answers. They may not want you to elaborate. Sometimes they do, depending on the situation. It's depending on what they're trying to sell you too. But a lot of times they like yes or no answers. The non-directive approach, which is found on page 25 of the 13th edition of the book, it is more controlled by the interviewee. They are looking for it is usually the interviewees coming in for different reasons. There could be a journalistic approach. It could also be in the workplace, meeting with your supervisor for advice for situations that you're having in the workplace, or you're just wanting to learn more. Those can be non-directive approaches. Like I said, they're looking for more answers. The interviewee can control the climate because they can ask the supervisor or someone else or whoever they're meeting with to meet them in a place that they want to meet in. And it can be either formal or casual. The questions are usually open-ended questions because these are research interviews, so to speak, because the person that's wanting the meeting is wanting information, which means that they're going to get volunteer information from their supervisors or from other people that they're trying to interview, like in a journalistic kind of way. You're going to go in and ask questions, but you're wanting the other person, the interviewer, you're wanting them to elaborate on your questions. So you are controlling the interview, but at the same time, you are wanting the interviewer to do most of the talking. Because you are listening to what they're having to say, you're writing it down. This is used, like I said, in journalistic kind of form, newspaper, magazine, articles, online articles, oral history. This is a great way for people to sit down and talk to like their elders and their grandparents and other people and get a history of somewhere that they're interested in or of their family. This is used in investigations because the interviewee kind of controls it because they're the ones that have the information. They're full of the information. In a lot of investigations, investigators like to make their interviewees as comfortable as possible. That's controlling that climate. They want them as comfortable as possible, so they'll give up as much information as possible. Counseling sessions are the same way. The person being counseled is the interviewee. They are put in a comfortable situation. The interviewer does not do anything that the client is not comfortable with, because if the client is not comfortable, they are not going to open up and give the interviewer the information that they're looking for to help them in their daily lives. This is also used in performance reviews, in problem solving, which, like I said, if you go in and talk to your supervisor to get information and also to find out something on how to do a job or how to do it better, you're looking for information. So you're the interviewee going to the interviewer, or you're the interviewer going to the interviewee. If the interviewee is going to control the pace and how much they talk to you and everything like that. The combination of approaches, which can be found on 25 and 26 of the 13th edition of the book. The combination of approaches is using both directive and non-directive, which to me seems like most interviews I've ever been on or conducted or been a part of turns into a combination approach, where in the beginning the interviewer has all of the control. They've set the meeting up. They tell you when to meet, where to meet, if it's formal, non-formal, and then they start asking the questions. But then it can turn around, especially in a job interview I have found. They set it up and you go. They go over all the information that they want to go over, and then once they have went through the information they went over or get the answers that they want you to ask any questions that you have about the job, about the situation, what you expect, what you want out of it, what your long-term goals in. So then it flips, and then it becomes a non-directive approach. A lot of counselors use this, especially in schools, because they want to find out if the student's having trouble in school. They want to find out why that student is not meeting goals and what they can do to change that. So it can go from a directive to a non-directive, or vice versa. It can start off as a non-directive to get them comfortable so they don't feel like they're being attacked in the situation, and then turn it around to a directive approach. This can, like I said, can be many different settings. In interviews, counselors, it can be sales interview. And if you think about it in daily life, everything's an interview. When you're talking to somebody, it's basically an interview. You're going to be asking questions. They're going to be asking questions. And it's a conversation that goes back and forth. We don't think of it that way. We think of it as just a conversation. But really, it's an interview because you're finding out information from that person. They're finding out information from you. And you're sharing it back and forth and using it in one way or another. So it's used in many approaches. And you can probably sit back and think about all the different roles in life that you've had, whether it be in jobs, at school, your family life, a sales pitch, going to buy a car, buying a house, just different things that you do. It's all interviews if you think about it. The key terms that I have in this presentation are the directive approach, which is found on page 24 of the book. And the definition that comes from the book is an interview in which the interviewer controls subject matter, length, answer, climate, and formality of the interview. Interviewee, found on page 25 of the 13th edition of the book, the party who is not in basic control of the interactions, such as a respondent in a survey interview or an application in a recruiting interview. An interviewer is just the opposite, the party who is in basic control of the interaction. And the non-directive approach is an interview in which the interviewee controls subject matter, length of answers, climate, and formality, and that is found on page 24 of the book. All of my information has come from this book. I did not use any other outside sources other than personal knowledge of interviews that I've had and situations that I've had. I hope this information about interviewing has helped in understanding the interchanging roles in our book. Thank you for watching.